Good morning. Sorry, I was late doing a little bit more reading on fire breaks, and I got distracted. I love finding a news item, and then I dive deep into it, and sometimes too deep, and I go off on real deep dives, and I'm not sure I need that much knowledge, but it is interesting. So hope you had a great holiday weekend, and I'm back at you on Wednesday, and some great articles today, and hope you enjoy them. And let's get started. So first of all, page 1, Apple Countersues Epic games. Epic game is Fortnite is the name of the game. And so Epic had sued Apple, as many of you follow me. I reported on that a few weeks ago. It sued them over the in-app fees that Apple is charging. So Apple sued Epic for duplicity and greed. We'll get back to the term greed, and you may find it interesting that Apple is suing anybody for greed when they charge a 30% commission for everything that goes through the Apple Store. So first of all, the question comes up is why countersue? The first thing when I'm reading it, and I always have these things like, to share with you, like, wait a minute, why do you need to countersue? You're already in court with them. The case is clearly put out there. You either win or lose. But there's a kind of a problem in the court system that if you don't countersue within 21 days, by the way, you may forfeit the right to sue in the future. I think this is a crazy setup that it clogs up the courts and creates a lot of legal work for nothing, because my bet is as soon as they solve the initial case that Fortnite brought, Apple will throw this one away. But it is what it is. So that's why you countersue, and that's why you see it quite often. Even in civil liability cases, you'll see a quick countersuit, and the city will countersuit a person that sued the police or whatever. By the way, Apple says that Epic has done $600 million in business through the Apple platform. But when they tell you that, the initial thing you got to think about is, okay, how much that $600 million did Apple keep? $180 million, 30%. Okay, real quick calculation. That's what you got to think. So $180 million. A third of everything Epic produced. They had all the IP. All they're doing is setting on Apple's platform, and Apple got 180 million of that. Most of that is in-app, what we call in-app services, purchases. So and I'm not a gamer, but I know you purchase weapons. You may purchase a different character for yourself to be at. So you do different things in the game, which drives the revenue. By the way, I think Fortnite is one of them that's a free download. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I think that one's a free download. They get you hooked, and you start buying in-app purchase. My wife has a specialty card game that was created, very difficult card game, cascading card game, and she has to buy in-app hints and I think there's a few other options she has to buy. It's not a lot of money, but I notice, every month or so, there's another, $3 or $4 charge. So it all adds up. So the question you've got to ask, and I've asked this question before, and appreciate some comments back, is this payment processing that Apple's doing, or is it more? For instance, if I want to buy a book through Amazon, if I'm on the Kindle, I can't buy it through the Kindle because Amazon has shut it off because they can't afford to give 30% of that book price to Apple to process a payment. So I have to get out of Kindle. I have to go over to Amazon, buy the book, and then go over to Kindle and upload it. And that's what Amazon has done to get around that 30%. Otherwise, everybody hurts. The writer, the publisher, and everybody has to do with only 70% of the income to begin with, okay? So is it payment processing? So, if you look at the services provided by Apple. Certainly, they provide a catalog, an online catalog. They provide downloads of the Fortnite game or the book or whatever. And they do some testing initially, some privacy testing and other testing initially when you first put up the product. And then they do all the payment processing. Well, payment processing is typically in the industry is 3.5%, right? At the very most, except for some, specialty cards. So they're way above payment, so they cannot rest and go to court and say, this is for payment processing. They won't survive, right? Because they're 30% against 3%, not going to survive. So maybe, most of their costs are up early, when they put it on the platform and they build the catalog, the download features, and then they do some testing. I'm sure Epic and others would say, okay, give us a one-time fee for that, and we'll pay that fee. And after that, we'll pay you a payment processing fee. This has been a huge winner for Apple, by the way, billions and billions every year, right, that they make off this app store. So here's my comparison, and you tell me if I'm wrong. So I'm in Phoenix, and I go buy a new truck. I've got a new Dodge truck. So I went and bought it. Let's say I bought it at Arrowhead Dodge. I did not, but let's say I did. So Arrowhead Dodge tells me, okay, we'll sell this truck, but you've got to come back to us for all gas and all services. And by the way, we're very open about that. And we charge 30% margin on top of those services. We want to make 30% from you for the rest of the life of this truck. And while I admire them for their openness and their transparency, which is I admire Apple for their transparency and open. By the way, Google Android Story copied Apple, so they're running about the same formula. But now I start thinking, okay, if I go in for service once a year, once every couple of years, and pay 30% margin, I'm okay with that. That's probably the best margin I've ever paid on service. I'm sure it's more like 100% most of the time. But on gas, I'm saying, man, all they're really doing, I mean, they don't have a lot of overhead on gas. And so do I want to pay for every gallon of gas, I want to pay a 30% margin? So you say, well, what's a normal gas station margin? Well, their margin is typically about 15 cents a gallon. In Arizona, that'd work out to be about a 5% margin right now. And by the way, they've got to pay a lot of expenses. They got to pay for that store. They got to pay for the tanks, the labor. They don't have, the gas is not part of that margin, but so they've got a lot of expenses to pay out of that. And they're and by the way, they got to pay payment processing because since I use a credit card when I go there. So all that expenses got to be paid. For Apple, if Apple was in the gas station business, they'd be charging a margin of 90 cents a gallon. So right now it's 15 cents a gallon a normal gas station. If Apple ran that same gas station, it'd be 90 cents, okay? 6 times the margin. Now, I'm sure Apple's not, again, as I said, they're not going to say they're in the gas business. They've got to elevate their services to a high level of what they do. And they're going to brag about all the things they do, which in most cases are done upfront as a one-time service. I'm convinced of it. Though they have got to say that they do this on an ongoing basis, that they keep looking at this Fortnite and whatever. I don't know. But so would you buy a truck if you had to take it only to one place for gas and service for the rest of its life? And by the way, if you sold it to somebody else, they had to too. Okay? All Apple platforms, you have to go to the same place. You can't sell your Apple iPhone to someone else and they use somebody else's store. This is a problem that's got to be addressed. And Europe may be first because they're very, anti large tech company, and I have a feeling they're going to blaze the trail first. But we'll see. Second article, California fire season is a record. 2.3 million acres burned, 3,400 structures, and 8 deaths. By the way, the structures and the deaths are not the record. It's by and large the number of acres. So last year, so there's 2.3 million acres this fire season. Last fire season, at this time, there were 118,000 acres. So it's a factor of 18 to 19 times the landmass this year. Of course, the Creek Fire is the huge one right now above Fresno. The clouds, the fire clouds, are 9 miles high above that area right now that you can see. That's fed by millions of dead trees, and if you look at why all them dead trees are there, they're part of that bark beetle infestation that ended in about the year 2017, but there was a 5-year drought from early 2000s to 2017, 2012 to 2017, and just millions and millions of trees that are felled and just sitting there is a future firewood, and of course this year it hit. So an observation: has this fire, or the Creek Fire, caught the forestry and land management unaware, and are they surprised by it? And I think we all know the answer to that. No, they're not surprised. They've been holding their breath since before 2017, right? As they traveled back through the woods and saw all that firewood sitting there, rotten firewood, just waiting for a fire to clean it up. So could there have been large opportunities to clean that out? Well, there's been at least 3 years since the end of 2017 to clear it out. I know it's a huge job, but it seems like forestry management these days is not working. And there's a lot of clear cases of it not working. By the way, I did a little bit of review on this because, my father, by the way, before World War II, built fire roads in Montana. And it was part of that Civilian Conservation Corps, CCC. And some of you might remember that. Sent young men out to have jobs and then sent money back to their family. So they were supporting their family, but yet, and they were getting out and doing great things. He helped do that. He loved that, by the way. He got better food than he ever got. He was basically starving as a kid on the farm. They didn't have enough, and they had great food, and he was outdoors all the time. He loved it as a young man, and got to see some of the country. But these fire roads, by the way, don't think of them as fire breaks. They do not work as fire breaks. They are fire access roads. They're access roads to get back into fire areas. They're not big enough to be fire breaks and don't function as such. And by the way, require a lot of maintenance. The erosion is a huge issue. They're used as hiking trails. A lot of people use them. A lot of use them as Jeep trails. And of course, the Jeeps and Razors and stuff tear them up. But these fire breaks, it's an interesting observation you get into. Remember the Paradise Fire that destroyed that town? They had worked on a big fire break for around that entire village. I think it was more than 100 feet that they had trimmed everything back. A few trees, but really all the brush and everything was trimmed back from that town 100 feet. And it didn't help. Some of that fire embers went out 5 miles ahead of that fire. 5 miles. So you would have to have a 5-mile fire break, right? Probably not going to happen. Though fire breaks do help. But the issue in California is wind. Santa Ana winds and the Diablos, and there's 100 different winds out there. But Joe's commented, firewood's home heating. That's right. We could have had natural fuel there for a lot of home heating for a lot of places for a long period of time. If we only knew how to process it. So, difficult subject on fire management. I'm glad I'm not one of those guys. So item number 3, two black police chiefs resigned, Rochester, New York, and Dallas, Texas. And the Rochester, New York one has the controversy on the guy named Prude. They put a spit hood over his head, and then later the autopsy said he died of asphyxiation. So New York Attorney General's already got involved in that one. You know they're going to jump ahead on that one, jump in the middle, and they're going to call a grand jury on it. And of course they've accused the police force of doing all sorts of illegal activities. And by the way, the guy himself has a history of mental illness, and he had acute PCP intoxication. Where have we heard that before, right? We've heard that in about the last 2 to 3 instances, okay? And so we ignore that PCP intoxication and we say it's all about that spit hood. You know, they bite and spit, and that's dangerous to the police officers. They put this hood over them. So here we're going to have another policy pretty soon saying you can't put a hood over them. And they're still going to die because we're ignoring the fact that they're mentally ill and they've got huge amounts of drugs. Acute PCP intoxication means they got enough PCP on board to kill them by themselves. So they'll win this court case, trust me. And we'll have riots after that's finished because I'm sure they're going to find them not guilty. The hood was part of their process. They can't be accused of using that when it's already been approved. So we'll see. But remember, years ago, we were going to fix this, right? And how were we going to fix it? The problem was it was an all-white police force. I don't know about Rochester, Dallas, but I'm sure they were pretty much all white going back 15, 20 years ago. We're going to fix that. We're going to put black police chiefs, black deputy police chiefs in. We're going to change the hiring practices to get more blacks in the force. We've done that. In fact, most cases now, there were black officers involved and they were working for black police chiefs. So we did that. Hasn't worked. Okay. Not been helpful. Well, some people might argue it's been helpful, but we've got riots and still we've got mentally ill people with acute PCP intoxication that are dying in police custody. So here we go again. We're going to solve this because it was all about white racism. So now you got to start questioning yourself, is racism the issue? Okay, that's what you got to start making. People that think through this deeply have got to look at that and say, is it really racism? We've had all these black people in charge and it's not helping. Item number 4, farewell to the jumbo jet. This is one that I took personal interest in, and maybe many of you don't care, but Boeing is discontinuing the 747 jet in 2022. The last 15 it's building are all freighters. It's a great freight vehicle. Remember, the nose tips up on it, so then you've got this huge access through the front that you can just take skid loads directly in there and pile skids in that plane from the front to the back. There is two so-called passenger planes that are being done. Those are the presidential transports. Remember, those haven't been updated in years and years, and Trump is, you remember some news on that. He had negotiated some lower pricing on that, but they're still working on those presidential planes. I think if Trump loses the election in 2020, he'll never fly on these, right? Unless as a passenger, a guest or something on that. I doubt if Biden wins, Trump is never going to be invited on board the presidential plane, right? Not going to happen. So Boeing has built almost 1,600 of these planes. This is a very successful plane. Huge freight capability with 500 passengers. And in the days of discounting fares to fill planes for long distance, this has been a hugely successful plane. But right now, most of them are grounded. There's only 35 747s in passenger service right now. Airbus has got the same issue with the 380. That came out in that was going to cancel in 2021. There's only 18 of them in use. That was launched in the year 2000, and it really was too late for the jumbo jets. Airbus was way too late. A lot of people believe Europe kept that going so that they'd have a full plane line, product line to compete against Boeing. Too late. It was built with a lot of labor that they just kept busy in Europe. The issue of having a nationalized company like that, they really weren't looking at the market anymore because the market had gone past them, and people were telling them that they were building a boat anchor. So, by the way, 747s were originally a cargo jet, and based on that tip up, because they built the cockpit real high and they had that tip up nose. So it was built in 1969. Okay, the year I graduated from high school, that came out. It could carry over 1 million pounds and fly 9,200 miles. And the 787 right now is Boeing's success story, and that's the huge one that they're making a lot of money on. But the rest of the line, I think we've seen the last of the jumbo jets. I don't think barring really new technology that allows that big of a plane. Somebody just asked about the 777. Well, that's the one tied up right now in all the regulatory issue. In fact, by the way, there's another issue that just came up last couple of days. I'm glad somebody asked about that. There's another issue that may hold that up even further. But 787 is the real moneymaker right now. So I'll miss the upper deck. I got to fly to Asia quite a bit in business class. And that upper deck of that 747, you went up those little narrow stairs, circular stairs. But when you got up there, it was all business class, and it was very quiet. And trying to think how many seats were up there, maybe 18 to 20 at the most. And so they had a dedicated stewardess up there to keep them going up and down the stairs. So you got great service. It was very quiet, all business class. So you had none of the other classes running through your class, as we always call the peons, right? Running through your business class. And very good service. And I liked they had a big area. If you sat on the window, they had a big area to the window that you could put a lot of stuff on. I used to get a lot of work done, and I'll miss 747s. They rode very nice. They get up in the sky and they rode very nice. Great airplane. I'll shed a tear for him today. Article number 5, a Trump comeback. Trump's behind in the polls. A lot of people are trying to figure out, does that make a difference or not based on his winning over Hillary when the polls predicted that Hillary would win in a landslide. So the editorial today, this is on the editorial page. I should comment on that for him to come back, it requires the race to be about policy and Biden's indulgence to the Democratic left. So it's got to be about those two items. If it's a character contest, Trump will lose to Biden. If that's what the voters, by and large, go out to the polls and pull that lever, Trump could lose the character contest. Trump's GOP coalition is a smaller coalition now than it was in 2016, but very intensely loyal. So we'll see how that works out for him. We've seen lately, and we saw in the GOP convention, that they paraded out a softer Trump. But Trump is doing his best to buck that. And if you have any question about that, look at the Labor Day press conference that Trump had. The reason he came out there was talk about the August jobs report and how successful that was and how the economy is coming back. And it was a great story if he had stuck to it. But let me show you what he did after he talked about that for a few minutes. He then started careening out of control, and that's what I call it. He first of all talked about Hunter Biden, making his money off China. Then he went to saying Biden was stupid. Then he went to John McCain. Then he went to the spy people in his campaign that was spying on his campaign using the FBI and the CIA. Then he talked about 80 million ballots being mailed out to who knows who without them asking for it. And then he talked about how bad Kamala did in the primaries and how she didn't even make it to the initial Iowa primary, and her poll numbers. So the economic news was diluted, and it was diluted as Trump only knows how best to do. And so the Democratic strategy is very easy right now. It's to keep Trump talking about Trump. And Trump does it very badly. He will continue to do it badly, I contend. And if he loses the election, I'm convinced it will be that we never could get the New York Manhattan out of Trump. The ego, the ability to just go off on subjects and lose his victory. I had a vice president tell me one time, said, "Lee, you've made the sale, now shut up." And somebody needs to get to Trump, but I'm convinced nobody can do that. And he should have paraded the economic results and made the media talk about economic results. But you know what the media story was out of this. It was Biden is stupid. And so now we have it about character. We've lost the battle. The battle is about character now. It'll be good luck if Trump can win on the character standpoint. Story number 6, it's good to be a government worker in a recovery. So the August job report shows that government workers were the least affected by this downturn caused by this COVID. Private payrolls were down 8.3%. State payrolls were down 4.2%, almost half. And then local were right in the middle at about 6.2%. By the way, the state being down 4.2%, 94% of those losses were in education, right? Around teachers not needing as many teachers with the COVID issue. So that may come back real quickly and be down even less as we head into September. So, and by the way, a lot of the local people and Democrats have been saying we got to help the states and local governments. We got to put, they want $3.5 trillion, a lot of that to get to the states. Well, it's not needed. Most of the states are doing okay in tax revenue. In fact, many states are up a few percent in tax revenue after the buying started. The consumer demand went back up. So states are not suffering on tax revenue, but a lot of states do need help with their pensions, and many believe this $3.5 trillion will take money from an area in Texas that doesn't have that issue and funnel it to an area in Chicago or New York or New Jersey that's got these huge underfunded pensions. So it's good to be a government worker when the economy goes bad. You suffer much less when that happens. So that's my 6 articles for today. Again, hope you had a great Labor Day weekend with your family, and appreciate the comments, and hang in there with you. I'll be there tomorrow. Cheers.